Hudson, what's going on, man? I think there's one other topic I wanted to touch on that, unfortunately, as big as the story as it's been, I don't think we really talked about on the podcast at all. And that's the Tory Lanez and Megan Thee Stallion case. Have you been following this at all?
Yeah, I mean, if anyone can truly follow this case,
So, for those who have been living under a rock and are not aware, basically what happened is, how long has this case been going on now? It's been over a year, right?
well, the shit
Um,
the shit happened in 2020, and
right.
then I mean,
Oh
the
my
court
God.
case itself, I think, was rather short. I don't think the court
Hmm.
case lasted that long, but this
But
shit
this,
started in 2020.
yeah. So basically, it was a situation where um, footage came out of Megan Thee Stallion outside of a car vehicle, and it was obvious that her foot was hurt. She was hobbling around, and later on, it came out that she had been shot in the foot, and that there are really only two potential suspects that potentially shot her. Either it was Kelsey, who had previously been her best friend, or it was Tory Lanez. And me personally, I said Tory Lanez right from the beginning, only because, from my perspective, women shooting other women is extremely rare. I don't care how upset they get at each other. Like, women, for the most part, do not shoot each other. They fuck each other's guys, they pull wigs, they'll tear your eyes out, they'll do a whole bunch of heinous, cruel things. But women shooting each other is extremely rare. Whereas men brutalizing women is, let's just be honest, it's just not that uncommon at all. And so when they said, okay, it's only between these two people, I'm like, it's Tory Lanez. That to me is obvious. But it's actually been a lot of back and forth, a lot of speculation. I think this whole entire situation did serious damage in some ways to Megan Thee Stallion's reputation. I think it strengthened her in other ways. I think there's a lot of people who saw her for what she is, a woman who was victimized, and decided that they were going to stand strong on her side. But there's definitely been a whole wave of internet trolls and people who are dragging her name through the mud and trying to tear her down as best they can. And it definitely was not that way before this whole situation started. And so it's just been kind of sad, to be honest. It's been kind of sad to watch these last couple of years and how it has unfolded and how she has been treated, when not only is she a victim, like, she's clearly a victim. She's clearly the woman who has been shot, either by another woman or this man. Either way, she is the one who has been shot. But also, it wasn't like she ran to the police. It wasn't like she wanted to say, "Hey, this person shot me. Go get them." She didn't try to sick the police on them. In fact, she tried to kind of sweep this under the rug, even though she was the one who got assaulted. She tried to sweep it under the rug and say, "Hey, let's just move on." And the state decided, nah, we're not going to do that. You can't just shoot women around here. And that's not going to happen. And she was put in a position where she had to testify and do all these things that, honestly, it was clear she didn't want to do. So I don't know. It's just sad. It's hard to watch. What are your thoughts, Hudson?
This whole thing stinks, and I'm no closer to knowing what the fuck happened. I mean, when I so initially when I first heard this, I sat and thought that maybe this was one of those situations because Tory Lanez is a small dude.
Hmm.
Megan Thee Stallion is an Amazon. She big,
Hmm.
right? And so I'm thinking to myself, maybe Tory was defending himself. Maybe she was whooping his ass in the car. Because initially I thought this whole thing, I thought she got shot in the car,
Right.
right? And I can't remember where I read it or how I read it because I didn't make that up in my head. I read that somewhere that it seemed like she was shot in the
There's been a
car,
lot of misinformation
right?
printed about this case.
And I don't know what is true information
Hmm.
is the real problem. It seemed like between all these parties involved, there's just a cover up, and we'll never know what truly happened. What I do know is that Tory Lanez is convicted on something that I think he has a strong grounds for appeal.
Hmm.
And reason being is that from what I've read from news stories, there's four people's prints on the gun supposedly, and Tory Lanez is not one of them, right?
Hmm.
Also, I'm sitting there, I'm hearing about this love triangle that was going on. That maybe some people within the triangle knew about it and some didn't. I don't know who knew what, but clearly it was an argument that seemed to be maybe about that. And they were
So my understanding is from what I've read about it that I guess Kelsey and Tory Lanez were the original couple. And then something happened with Kelsey. I think she had an accident or something like that. She was out the picture for a while. And then Megan Thee Stallion started up a relationship with Tory Lanez.
which they
And then
denied, right?
which
Like Megan Thee Stallion
which
denied that, right?
she originally denied it, but then she had to admit that it was true.
Right.
And so then when Kelsey came back into the picture, all of a sudden, then that becomes an issue because, of course, she didn't realize that someone she looked at as a friend was now sleeping with her man. And the unfortunate thing about this case as well is that a lot of people have taken that as an opportunity to try to pull up a lot of Megan Thee Stallion's overall sexual history. So things have come out about people that she's had, sexual relations with, and folks have tried to use that to paint her in a certain way and to try to essentially throw dirt on her name when again she is the victim. Like she
Right.
did not shoot
Plus, she a
herself,
grown ass
y'all.
woman. She want to sleep with
Exactly.
people. She can sleep with people. She a
And
grown
all
ass
these
woman.
grown ass men are sleeping with even more women, but
Yeah.
they don't.
So
Come
I
on
mean,
now.
but you
Come
know,
on.
I'm when I'm reading all these stories and I'm seeing that there's witnesses who went missing for a little while and just where they do that at? Witness just not gonna show up when they supposed to be there witnessing, right?
Mhm.
And this is a and I think this was a witness that I think this was Tory Lanez's driver, I think,
Mhm.
who was
Mhm.
supposed to be witnessing that never showed up. No, sorry, Megan Thee Stallion's bodyguard or something, because Kelsey sends a message and says, "Hey, Tory shot Megan," and then she goes back on that in her testimony and says she don't know who shot Megan,
Mhm.
right? And and then you got an eyewitness who was across the street at his house or some shit like that, and he's saying he saw muzzle flashes before Tory Lanez got out and started blasting. He said Tory
Mhm.
Lanez started blasting everywhere after he saw some muzzle flashes. I'm sitting there like, so I don't know if any of the three of them actually know who shot her. I don't know if anybody know who actually shot her. You know,
So
she just got shot.
here's the problem, though, because when the verdict came down, a lot of people felt like it was unfair and a miscarriage of justice, and and you mentioned feeling like Tory Lanez has a strong case for appeal. I actually don't think he has a strong case for appeal, and the reason for that is the prison conversation that was leaked, where it you can clearly hear him apologizing to Kelsey and saying that he was too drunk, that he never would have done that, and that he's so sorry, and that he would never do something like that again. Now the trolls and the people who have been swearing up and down that Megan Thee Stallion was going to lose this case, they're trying to paint this as Tory Lanez was apologizing for infidelity, apologizing to Kelsey for having relations with Megan Thee Stallion. But anybody who's looking at this objectively can pretty clearly tell that that's not the case. He's apologizing because he shot that girl, and he's astounded that he would do something so stupid. And he's trying to basically make sure, and he wants to get in touch with Megan and make sure that they're not going to handle this legally, that they're going to basically move on, sweep this under the rug, and that he's going to be okay. That testimony, that phone call rather, is extremely damning, and it looks like the jury pretty much disregarded the fingerprints on the gun and the witnesses that wouldn't come forth and the testimony of both Megan Thee Stallion and Kelsey, which kind of went back and forth on the facts and was not consistent, and said, listening to this phone call, this nigga's guilty,
and,
and
and that's
y'all go
exactly
ahead and
what
put him
happened.
in the jail,
And here's my problem because I heard the phone call,
right?
and and yes, is my feeling that he was apologizing for shooting her. I, it was initially.
Hmm.
Now here's what my feeling actually is at
Hmm.
this point, right? My feeling about this actually is that when I listen to it and I listen really closely, he makes sure not to mention anything which you would expect that he wouldn't mention that he shot anyone. Like you would
Right,
expect that he wouldn't say that.
right.
But here's my thing. I in the immediate aftermath of the situation, I would not expect Kelsey not to say shit. Right? She didn't say that because I would expect even if it was a mistake, it's like, yeah, but you shot her. You know, like what the
Mm.
fuck? You know, you didn't hear nothing like that from her. She was very careful not to say shit herself. And they were
See,
both careful never to mention that anybody why she was at the hospital or nothing. Like to
see,
me, this seems like they both here's what I think. The prosecution wants to put somebody in jail and convict somebody for it, which they have succeeded now. They have convicted somebody for it, and I think they're cool with that. I don't think they give a damn if it's overturned in appeal. What I think is that the prosecution came at both of them, and they both decided that we're going to do some shit to try to make this where, because if you look at Kelsey's testimony, she starts pleading the fifth. She starts doing some shit to make it look a little suspicious on her that she might have actually been the one to do the shooting, right? And so to me, this is a game both of them are playing to try to put a little doubt on either one of them. And that's why I think this is going to get overturned because all they have is that recording that doesn't specifically mention it. And so if you take out that recording alone, they got nothing, in my opinion. They got nothing. They got an eyewitness from across the street who saw him start shooting. So at the most they got him having an illegal firearm and blasting it. To me, that's what they got. They
mhm,
don't have anybody who's actually sitting there really what do you call it uh
testifying.
right. I
Mhm.
you all you have Megan there saying he shot her. But after that, you got nothing. You got nothing. It's just even Kelsey turned overturned her earlier thing and said she don't know who shot him. The eyewitness from
So
across the street can't confirm who shot him. The witnesses didn't show up. It's all a debacle, and it looks to me like the prosecution's done. They're not really going to fight this. I think it's going to get overturned.
I don't agree because I do agree that this recording is really all they have, at least from what we know. Again, we're not privy to all of the evidence that was provided to the jury. So there might be other pieces that they were provided that we just don't know about yet. But even more to the point, when you say, well, why didn't Kelsey bring up the fact that Tory Lane shot that girl? One, Kelsey knows that um, phone calls from prison are being recorded. So the only reason to bring that up or try to force that information in there is if you're trying to trip Tory Lanez up or if you're trying to assist in getting him jailed for this particular crime. And remember, at this point, Kelsey is not on the side of Megan Thee Stallion. Like they're really no longer friends. That's the whole reason for this whole blow up in the argument and everything that happened is that Kelsey realizes, okay, this is a woman who has completely fucked me over. And so while she may not have loyalty towards Tory Lanez either, that does not mean that she wants to step in and try to be the one that connects the dots for the legal authorities to make it easy for them to figure out who shot Megan Thee Stallion. She probably does, she might not even care that he shot Megan Thee Stallion. And as far as her changing her testimony, what has come up multiple times is the possibility that Tory Lanez tried to pay her off in order to ensure that she would not say anything that would directly connect him to the crime, or that he made it clear there would be consequences if she decided to step in and try to do that. Again, she has no friends in the industry now. Like, she was friends with Megan Thee Stallion, and she was in a relationship with Tory Lanez, and now both of those things have crumbled. And with everything that's happened in the case and everything else going on, there's nobody around her in the industry that she can really trust. So I'm sure she's feeling very vulnerable these past few years, more so than she did before. So as far as like her going back and forth being evidence of, well, there's doubt you can place in here and strengthening an appeal case for Tory Lanez, I honestly don't really feel like it does, because I feel like the prosecution is basically just going to say the reason that she's waffling back and forth is because you're putting undue pressure on people, and you're putting undue pressure on people because you're terrified of going to jail because you know you shot that girl. It's just like when mob bosses get witnesses not to show up, or all of a sudden their witnesses leave. Like, it can help the mob boss, but sometimes it also strengthens the prosecution's case. And I feel like that's the situation here. And I absolutely feel like, even though a lot of the other evidence is shaky, that phone call in in corroboration with everything else they have that they feel like points towards Tory Lanez, I feel like it's enough to keep him in jail. Now, do I feel like it's enough to keep him in jail for the 20 some odd years that he could stay in jail? I don't think so. I don't feel like they're going to just throw the book at dude, but I do feel like he's definitely going to have to do some time, and that he should do some time for shooting a woman out of anger. Like, that shit is crazy.
I think they're gonna overturn the shooting her. I think they're gonna, of course, keep the fact that he had the gun when he shouldn't have, and I think they're gonna get him for discharging it. But discharging a gun, ultimately, I, it's one thing to offer money and get her to get up there and say, "Hey, I don't actually know who shot him," and
Hmm.
it's another thing to get up there and plead the fifth at a very specific moments in time to where you can put doubt that maybe you shot him.
Right.
So there's differences in there where, why make it where she's possibly putting herself in there and creating that doubt anyway, when she could just get up there and say, I don't know who shot
Hmm.
him,
Hmm.
which she did that, but then she did those other things that's like, and this wasn't a plead the fifth on trying to plead on I'm trying not to saying I perjured myself earlier.
Right.
No, no. She
But
already pretty much let that go. It was the plead the fifth on I might have been the one that shot him, and I don't really want to say
But the problem
anything
is,
that
but the problem with what you're saying is, uh, us as general citizens, we can say that and say, "Hey, you pleading the fifth in this situation looks shady as hell." But from a legal standpoint, as far as Tory Lane's defense and the prosecution, you cannot use a person pleading the fifth as evidence of their guilt or evidence of your client's lack of guilt. Like, pleading the fifth is legally protected. So you can't use it to paint people in a certain way. So it's not going to work for his appeal. Like, even though, look, taking a step back and trying to look at things from an objective standpoint, you can absolutely make that case. You can't make that case in court. It's not legal. So it doesn't help him.
it does help, and here's why. Because no, lawyers can't sit up there and say she pleaded the fifth, so she's guilty. No, you're
Hmm.
right, can't do that.
Right.
But once I hear the testimony, which
Right.
that's going to go into the appeal, I'm sure. Once
Uh-huh.
I hear the testimony, I can't unhear that she pleaded the fifth at
Hmm.
very specific times. I can't unhear that as a judge or as a jury. It's still seat there in my mind. And then of course, the lawyers for Tory are they claimed in the trial, and they're going to claim there that someone else shot Megan Thee Stallion. Who
Hmm.
could it be? And
Hmm.
where's my mind as a person who's sitting there going, where's it going to go?
Hmm.
Right? And so, because there's this need to somebody's got to be blamed for shooting this woman, right? And
Mhm.
that's the main thing with people and lawyers. They're gonna the jury or the judge, they're gonna want to blame somebody for this. And
Mhm.
who else could it be? There were four people standing there at the time. Who could it be? The driver, I guess they're out of it, right? We know it wasn't the driver. So
Mhm.
it was between Tory Lanez, Kelsey, or Megan Thee Stallion shot her own damn self in the foot. And
No.
I think the forensic evidence didn't support her shooting herself.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
it's down to two people that you figure it's between. And so the obvious thing that Tory's lawyers are going to do is there's only one other person to obviously point the finger at, and that's going to be at her. And she then took her ass and pleaded the fifth on some very important questions at that moment in time. And
Mhm.
so, no, they don't have to say it. I mean, it's just like when they tell you you have a right to remain silent. Well, it's very telling on which questions you decide to remain silent on, right?
Mhm.
It's just best you say I'm going to shut the fuck up completely,
Right.
because if you ask me, hey, do you have drugs in the car, and I say no, do you have guns in the car? I plead the fifth.
Mhm.
Well, come on. I mean, even though they may can't specifically go off of me saying I plead the fifth, I
Mhm.
mean, it's in their minds now. In their minds, I got guns in the fucking car because
Mhm.
I didn't plead fifth on the drugs. I said that straight up. With the
Right.
guns, I pleaded the fifth, right? So
Mhm.
yeah, I got guns in the car. That's obviously what they're gonna think. And people are predictable creatures, and all you need is doubt.
Well, we'll see. It might be possible. Some tells me this case isn't even close to being over.
It's
I
a
think
fucking
Tor
circus.
I think Tory Lane's parents made that very, very clear without their
Oh man.
outburst against JC when the verdict got handed down. Hey, man, I always appreciate the moms and the dads that stand behind their children, no matter what. Your child could do the most heinous shit, but the mother will always be there, letting the world know that my baby's innocent and y'all are all heinous, evil people. I'm like, bruh.
I don't understand it. What I heard what he said.
Uh-huh.
I saw some tweets,
Hmm.
but I still don't make the connection on where he thinks Jay Z was exactly involved in this. Not
So
not maybe not Jay Z specifically, but this system or whatever.
Megan Thee Stallion is on the Rock Nation label, which Jay Z owns. So the thinking is that Jay Z used his money to grease the wheels and get this, and basically get this prosecution, the win that they needed over Tory Lanez. That this is all about money and connections and evil people working together, as opposed to my son being guilty of a heinous crime. That's why he's bringing up Jay Z.
Yeah, I mean, I have trouble figuring how important this case is to Jay Z and Rotten Nation. I'm having a lot of trouble in figuring out how this is important to them, except that it is their artist. You
Well,
know, I
I would say it is important to them because not only is Megan Thee Stallion their artist, but I don't know. I'm not familiar with their entire roster, but I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that Megan Thee Stallion is their largest audience, and Megan Thee Stallion has been very public and made it very clear for quite some time now that she believes Tory Lanez shot her, and that she believes that this army of people online who are basically have no regard for a black woman who's been shot by this other man. And
oh yeah,
and there's this
yeah.
whole wave of people on the other side saying, well, no, this is bullshit. Megan Thee Stallion got shot by her best friend, and she just doesn't want her friend that essentially she fucked over to go down for this crime. And so she's trying to frame Tory Lanez for what's occurring. And so if Megan Thee Stallion had lost this case, it probably would have done tremendous damage to her reputation and her brand, which in turn would have impacted Rock Nation. So, I mean, That's the reasoning behind it. I still think it's fucking crazy for you to
Right, sounds
bring
crazy to me.
Jay-Z into this. I think that's wild, super wild. But at the end of the day, I do understand where those dots connect. Like there is a there, but come on, bro. Like, come on.
Like you said in the very beginning, it seemed like everybody was trying to cover this up. Like, you know, like even Megan didn't want to really go into, what happened.
Right.
And so, I think before anybody said anything, I mean, I think the public just kind of went crazy with this.
Hmm.
And like I said, originally I thought that she was beating his ass in the car, and the only thing he could do was grab a pistol, get off me, woman.
Yeah.
That's what I
I figured it
initially
was gonna
thought.
be some hilarious shit as well.
Yes, and
Unfortunately, this hasn't turned out to be all that funny. But
it would be a shame if it turned out to be one of those situations where it wasn't him that actually shot her, and it was this big outcry on why we're not defending black women, and why we always got to the victim blame and
mhm,
go against that, and then it turns out to actually be to be that, and so it would be a bit shame on that. Um,
that's why I'm saying, as far as Megan Thee Stallion's reputation, she needed to win this case. Like,
yeah, yeah,
it's actually a big deal for her.
I guess that is very true. But still, it's along the lines of I don't see that being a Rock Nation issue.
No.
I see them just dropping her from their roster if it turned out to be that, and they move on with their lives. You
Mhm.
know, that's all I would see there. But
Yeah.
yeah, weird, weird.
We'll be following this, I'm sure. I'm sure there'll be more developments and we'll end up talking about it on the show. But my hope is that Megan Thee Stallion, at least at some point, can start a recovery process and kind of move on with her life and try to just flourish and do well in her career. And as far as Tory Lanez, like, bruh, shooting a woman because you're upset about something that she said is just not the move. Like I still don't want to see him destroyed. So, hopefully however many years he gets when he comes out, he's able to pull his life back together and move forward. But there's gotta be a punishment for this. You can't conduct yourself in this way.
Yeah,
This
what
is
was the
not
reason?
ethical.
Supposedly, she said all his stuff was trash or something.
I think he
I,
disputed that, but it's obvious some sort of argument ensued and some words were exchanged that caused Tory Lanez to shoot her.
Yeah.
Bottom line.
Oh, and did you hear it? Kylie Jenner was originally they were trying to get her to witness, and
Yeah.
they just
Well,
decided against that.
supposedly, Kylie Jenner is the reason the argument kicked off. Like, supposedly, the three of them were at the club. Tory Lanez originally was with Kelsey. Then he started messing around with Megan Thee Stallion. But now, at that point, he wasn't directly with either one of them, and he was in the club and he saw Kylie Jenner. So he went over to Kylie Jenner and basically tried to holler at her to try to see if he could
Right.
get with her. And then Megan Thee Stallion saw that and she felt insulted even though they were not in a relationship together. And so then they get outside the club, and of course, Tory Lanez is in his feelings because he's like, "We're not even a couple. We're not together like that. Why are you getting in the middle of me, potentially being able to get with her?" And then it blew up into whatever it blew up into. And so,
And
yeah,
Kylie unfriended both them motherfuckers on
right, right,
social media.
right.
It's
Who can
crazy.
blame her?
No matter how much money you got, no matter how much money you don't got,
Hmm.
this same shit goes on in the hood all the fucking time.
Come on now,
All the fucking time,
it's
and it's same
inescapable.
shit. No matter how far you think you might be above it, no matter what you think of yourself or your status in life, them rich motherfuckers doing the same dumb shit we doing right here in the gutter. It
Basically.
don't matter.